Hey everybody, welcome to the latest edition of Sketchy Go Ichie. I'm your host and artist, Roger Andrews, illustrator at large. And listen, I just wanted to kind of show how I like to render pinup art. Particularly the pretty girls that you see all over Instagram, drawn and rendered and digitally painted by some of the best artists on earth. I don't fancy myself that quite yet, but I'm working on it. And I want to help you guys get there as well. So, if you're interested in learning the process, stay tuned and enjoy.
Sketchy Go Ichie.
Okay, let's do this. Pinup art. If anyone's familiar with the history of it, please feel free to share in the comments because from what I know, it generates from World War II, drawing really attractive ladies on the airplanes and bombers during that period of time, and then I'm sure it progressed through literature, through magazines and posters and all that moving forward. So I'm doing kind of my own homage to that. This is actually for a specific product, or should I say project. It was for Dean Yeagle's MANDY character. Feel free to Google and look that up. And I was asked to contribute to a comic book tribute to Dean Yeagle, the artist, in a form of basically a comic book full of pinup art of the MANDY character and Scoots the dog. In whatever scenario we saw fit. I chose to do this sort of classic 1950s and 60s style movie posters, kind of Barbarella, 1960s Jane Fonda Barbarella style, kind of like attractive ladies in space, basically. And so what you're seeing happen here is me basically doing thumbnail sketches. And so as part of how to draw pinups, I think the crucial element to start with is the layout. So in order to get a good layout, I highly recommend, and this is what I do and this is what a lot of artists do, is you do pinups in the form of thumbnails. And thumbnails are basically just super, super loose sketches. And my approach is the looser the better, particularly at this stage. And what it does is it allows me to not be bogged down with the details. And this part is what a lot of artists get hung up on. They lose sight of the composition, of the layout, of everything that makes a final piece attractive by only focusing on the final piece. And so if you're the type of artist right now and you open up either a blank document or bring out a sheet of paper and you're starting to work on the final render, please stop what you're doing and really do what I'm doing here. Loose sketches, gestural, nothing is clearly defined, and it's what allows me to do so many of them. If you notice, they're kind of flashing on the screen really quickly, and the reason for that is because it's literally me like quickly just kind of like scratching out like shapes and forms and seeing how those interact. And as you see here, it's like just me just having fun kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't work for any particular layout. And if you're working on the final art and right away, like right out of the gate, you're probably, unless you've spent a zillion hours doing this process, you're probably like shortchanging the final result. So step one to anything, in my opinion, should be the construction, the foundation building, the compositional layout stuff. Then you can work on the details such as anatomy and the placement of all the different elements within that composition. But as you can see here, this is just me trying to do a variety of different things. And then eventually I'll land on one that I choose to enhance or to add more flavor or more detail to. So first step on how to draw pinups is figure out your composition. In this stage, this is me. I selected one composition that I wanted to work with. And initially what I was going to do is I was going to share this with a fellow artist and have them ink it and then have another artist do the coloring. As it turned out, I did have, half of the story was covered by one of the artists, or should I say 2 artists actually. I got a little extra bonus help on this particular piece in terms of the color part of this. But in the construction stage, the next step, and in my opinion, is to do kind of a rough, a tighter rough. You don't necessarily have to. Again, if you're someone who's got many hours of drawing, and you've kind of nailed down the anatomy, and you've nailed down all the compositional elements you need to make a good piece. In this case, because I initially planned on doing having another artist do the inks, I thought I'd give them a tighter pencil sketch. Another thing to note here, if you notice, I'm rendering in different colors. You notice this blue sort of tighter line is on top of that red line. The red line being the thumbnail. The blue is kind of the tighter rough. The reason I do that is to distinguish or to differentiate between the two. And I want to be able to clearly see the difference between the tighter pencil sketch, which will eventually be inked, and the super loose gestural thumbnail. Again, some artists do that, some don't. For me, ordinarily, if I'm going to ink it myself, oftentimes I will just work right from the thumbnail. And because I generated the idea, I have a sense of where I want to go and where I want to place all the different pieces and parts of that particular piece. And so for me, I could just go from thumbnail to final ink directly because I know, I'm the director of the film in that case, and I know I have a vision for where it's going to go. When working with a fellow artist, I feel like it's best to give them, to take a lot of the guesswork away from them, not away from them, hopefully it's helpful to take a lot of that off their plate. So all they have to do is kind of focus on, where the black line is going to go, where the shadow is going to go, and the forms and the volumes. Let them just work on that part of it. I know that's how I'd like it to be. All right. So I have it all kind of roughed out. If you notice at the very end there, I kind of shifted the head because I could see that anatomically the head was a little off. So I shifted and moved it downward. And now it's time for detailing. This is the inks. This is where I actually spend my time making sure the line weights are nice and making sure the volumes and the shapes are, I've been able to best represent where all the planes of the face and the hair and all the other elements. And if you notice here, I brought in a couple of pieces of reference from Dean Yeagle's original art, just so I can capture my version of the Mandy character in Scoots the dog. And so I thought it wise to at least capture the details out of respect for the original artist. And of course, I'm doing my own version of it, but so I pull out a little bit here, and this is, of course, I'm starting to work on the elements of the body in conjunction with the face. And of course, you can go any which way you want when you're working on pin-up art, but to me, it's crucial that you capture the face and make it as pretty as possible. And of course, you obviously want the female figure to be as attractive as well. But for me, the face is key. And I've seen some pinups get butchered because the face is unattractive. And so if you notice, I kind of started my focus on the face, and I wanted to make it as attractive as I could in my own style, while representing what the Dean Yeagle, the original artist, did. And so I think I accomplished that. And then also I had the added challenge of, if in this particular piece, notice the space girl, she's got the dome, the sort of the astronaut helmet on top too. So I knew that line work has to be a little thinner because it's going to be behind glass. And I thought and then also it has to be as detailed and defined enough so that you don't lose the face behind the glass too. So it was a little bit of a balancing act on that. But here, again, I'm inking stage. So this is stage 3 in the process in this particular piece. And this is where I'm adding the detail. This is where I'm deciding where I want to spot the blacks, where I want to find areas to create contrast. This is the stage to do that in. If you start off and you lay your pen on a blank sheet of paper and you're working on this stuff right out of the gates, unless you're a highly experienced artist, I would highly suggest not doing that. Really take your time and do all the sketching and all the sort of exploration stuff and all the feeling out process. Get that done early, then apply all the detail on top. It's almost like you're, in a way, it's almost like you're baking. You're adding ingredients. You don't literally just like, throw a bucket of dough in the oven and start baking, right? You mix in the eggs and you mix in all the ingredients. And to me, that's what makes for a tasty dessert in the end. And the tastier the dessert is definitely going to be determined by like how much sort of like grunt work you do in the early stages. And I say grunt work affectionately because the reality, I actually like that part of it. In some cases, I prefer it to this stage where you see, as I pull out here, the stage where you're like defining and kind of noodling all the details. Some artists prefer that part of it, and I think that's why artists jump to this stage, because they can't wait to get to the finished piece and get to the end. Which, for me, you always hear that cliche. It's the journey, not the destination. It's probably not not effective in this case, because the reality, it's both. It's the journey and the destination. And what is pleasurable to me is the sketchy part of it. Hence sketchy go ichie. And for other artists, it's the noodling, the fine detail. It's like, here we zoom in. Obviously, I'm starting to bring back the reference, and I'm starting to work on the dog part of it. Obviously, he's got the dome, the sort of astronaut, dome over his head too. So I've got to be kind of mindful of like how I do the line work in there. Has to be detailed enough so that you can recognize it is a dog behind the glass, but the line shouldn't be as intense or thick as the outer part, because it's as you see, once it gets colored, you're going to see how it plays a bigger role. But again, this stage, this is where you go ham. Throw all your details in. The rivets and the little seam work, and you make sure, like here I'm playing around with the hair and the reflections of the glass and all that stuff. This is the stage to do it. And same deal with the rest of the body. I pull out wide here, and hopefully you guys can kind of see this well on screen. Particularly you guys who have smaller screens, it might be a little trickier, but hopefully you can see as I pull out wide, it's all about capturing, the planets in the background, and, kind of, roughing in, what the atmosphere would look like on one given planet versus like, this one here's got kind of a moon texture to it. This is the stage for all of that stuff. All the, again, if you're that type of artist, the fun stuff, the noodling and the fine detail. This is mid-level detail. To be honest with you, I've done, and if you guys seen some of my previous videos, I've done more detailed, more intricate art, particularly when I do those pop culture portraits. Go on back and check those out. A lot of those have a little more line art and a little more depth and a little more detail. Because I knew this was going to be colored by another artist, I wanted to allow them the freedom to be able to apply color with a soft fit, but I wanted to give them a roadmap on how I perceive the shading and the color should go, at least the broad. So that's why I added this fourth stage, which I almost never do, because I generally, if I'm coloring something myself, or if I'm going to give it to another artist, I tend to leave that more open, because I like, as much as I like the early stages of doing the sketches stuff, the fine detail, not as much. I re-energize when it comes to do the color stage. But in this case, I knew it was going to be another colorist, so I at least wanted to give the depth. And you can kind of see here, this is the sort of the grayscale, well, black and white. Here's one of the colors versions from my buddy Tom Chu. And here's the final color that was released and sent on for the project. That was by Ashleana Felice. All right. So anyways, that's Sketchy Go Ichie. Live your moment. Be sure to check me out on all the socials. Be sure to click subscribe. And definitely click the like button. See ya.